Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a right that every single one of us has, but honestly, most of us don't really get: the right to fight back.
So, someone attacks you. How far can you legally go to fight back? It's a terrifying thought, right? Well, the answer lies in something called the right of private defense, and it's a huge part of India's new criminal code, the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or BNS for short.
So what is the right of private defense? Well, the core idea is pretty simple, actually. The law gets that the state, the police, they have a duty to protect you, but they can't be everywhere all the time. So when danger is right there in your face, the law basically says you are your own first line of defense. And get this, it's not just a legal loophole, it's considered a basic human right.
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to look at your basic right to defend yourself, then the rules of engagement, so to speak. We'll talk about the critical red lines you can't cross, when the ultimate force is justified, and stick around for the end, because there's a wild twist in the law that you probably won't see coming.
Okay, first up, your right to defend. And what makes this whole thing so fascinating, legally speaking, is how it deals with your state of mind, your intent.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. In almost every other legal defense, you're basically arguing, I didn't mean to do it, right? Think about an accident or something a child does. There's no criminal intent. But private defense flips that completely on its head. The law acknowledges, oh yeah, you absolutely intended to harm your attacker. But, and this is the huge but, it says that intent was justified. Why? Because you were reacting to a threat. You weren't the one who started it.
Okay, so what are the rules of engagement? Who and what can you actually protect? The law's super clear on this.
It really breaks down into two categories: people and property. For people, and this is key, your right is huge. You can defend yourself or any other person against basically any offense to the human body. But for property, it's a bit more narrow. You can defend your stuff or someone else's, but only against specific crimes like theft, robbery, or trespass. So the big takeaway? The law values human life way more broadly than property.
And here's another mind-bending part of it. Your right to defend yourself doesn't just disappear because your attacker isn't technically guilty in the eyes of the law. So, say you're being attacked by a child, someone of unsound mind, or even someone who is drugged against their will. They might not be held criminally responsible for their actions, but that doesn't matter. You still have the right to protect yourself from the harm they're causing. Your safety is what counts.
Now, this right is incredibly powerful, for sure, but it's not a free-for-all. There are some serious red lines, which brings us to the idea that this right is a shield, not a sword.
This is probably the most important rule to remember. Your right is preventive, not punitive. It's a shield to stop an active threat, not a sword to punish someone after the fact. The second the danger is gone, like the attacker drops the weapon or runs away, your right to use force is over. Done. And just as important, your response has to be proportional. You can't bring a tank to a fistfight,
And this whole shield not sword idea also depends on whether help is available. Let's imagine this scenario. If the police show up and arrest the person, your right to defense ends right then and there. But what if the cops are there but can't or won't help you? Well, your right continues. And if the attacker keeps coming at you even with the police there, you guessed it, your right to defend yourself is still active.
And speaking of public servants, there's a big restriction here. You have no right of private defense against, say, a police officer who is acting in good faith and just doing their job. Simple as that.
Okay, let's move on to the heaviest part of this discussion, the ultimate justification. When can you legally and justifiably cause an attacker's death?
Everything, and I mean everything, comes down to one key concept: reasonable apprehension. What does that mean? It means the court doesn't care about what was actually true with 20/20 hindsight. It cares about what a reasonable person in your shoes, in that terrifying moment, would have believed to be true. So if someone pulls a super realistic toy gun on you, your fear is judged based on that moment, not on the fact that it was a toy.
So the BNS actually lists out 7 deadly scenarios where causing death is justified. You are legally allowed to use lethal force if you have a reasonable fear of: number 1, your own death; 2, grievous hurt, we're talking really severe, life-changing injuries; 3, rape; 4, other acts of sexual violence; 5, kidnapping or abduction; 6, being trapped somewhere with no hope of escape; or 7, an acid attack. In any of these situations, the law is on your side.
And this isn't just theory. Look at this real-life case, Amjad Khan versus the state.
A man saw a mob burning his neighbor's house and then start to break down his own door. He fired his gun to protect his family, and the court said, justified. Why? Because his fear wasn't just a guess, it was a reasonable apprehension of death based on everything happening around him.
All right, you've stuck with me this far. Now for that twist I mentioned earlier. This is where the law gets really, really interesting. With a surprising paradox, can an aggressor claim self-defense? So, the general rule is pretty straightforward, right? The person who starts the fight, the aggressor, gets no right of private defense. That makes total sense. A thief breaks into your house, you fight back. They can't exactly sue you for assault. They were the one in the wrong.
But let's imagine a specific scenario. A thief is caught inside a home. The family manages to overpower him and tie him up.
So far, so good. The threat is neutralized. They've successfully defended their home. But then, they douse him in kerosene and are about to set him on fire. At that exact moment, they have crossed a massive line. They've gone from defense to punishment.
So think about it. In that moment, who is the real victim? Who's in imminent danger of unlawful death? And who has the right to self-defense?
And here's the mind-blowing paradox. When the family's actions became more than necessary harm, they became the new aggressors. And the original thief, the guy who broke in, suddenly gains the right of private defense to save his own life. The tables have completely turned, legally speaking.
So let's do a quick recap. What are the big takeaways here? Private defense is your right for when the state can't get there in time. It's a shield to stop harm, not a sword to punish someone. You can't use more force than you need to. In the most extreme cases, yes, lethal force is on the table, and maybe most importantly, if you go too far, you can go from being the victim to the aggressor in the eyes of the law.
But in the end, this entire powerful right really boils down to one single word: reasonable. But think about it. In a moment of pure, blinding panic, what is truly reasonable? That's the question at the heart of every single one of these cases, and it's what makes this such a fascinating and complex part of the law.